Hello, my name is Robbie Dodenbeer, and I'll be speaking to you today on JSON. This is for the CIT 230 class. The information, if anyone who is still interested in learning more about JSON, can be found using the link I provided below. All my research was also conducted here on this site. So this begs the question, what is JSON? JSON is an acronym. It stands for JavaScript Object Notation. Uh, and so JSON is a syntax for storing and exchanging data. JSON is considered a self-describing notation, and it's easy for the end user to understand. So JSON in its simplest form is text written with JavaScript object notation. So having an understanding of object orientation programming will help here a little bit. But just think of objects as little containers, and just within your JavaScript you call those containers and it will provide the information. So we'll kind of dive into that in some of the examples here shortly. So why use JSON? So when JSON is used to kind of exchange information between a browser and a server and vice versa. And we need a way for the two to understand each other no matter what program language is being used. And so the simplest form to do that is via text. JSON is a good medium for that because it is just text, and we have the ability within JavaScript to convert that text into objects, and we can send those to our browser and display the information. We can also, in receiving data from a web server, we can also convert that into JavaScript objects, which then, like I said, we can share on our web page. This allows us to work with data as JavaScript objects with no complicated parsing and translations. Since the JSON format is text only, it can easily be sent to and from the server and used as data format by any programming language. JavaScript has built-in functions to convert a string written in JSON format into native Java objects. I've gone ahead and shown you an example of that function, json.parse. So if you receive data from a server in JSON format, you can use it like any other JavaScript object. JSON does have some syntax rules. In order for your browser to interpret the information and the web server to interpret the information, you do need to use these specific rules. The first being the name value pairs, and I've gone ahead and provided an example. So on the left hand side, we've given our field a name. It has some purpose. It makes it easy for the end user to understand. We know this is a name field, and within that we've provided a value. So the value of John makes sense, pretty easy to understand, and also to code for. You can also include multiple informations inside your JSON string. So for instance, I've provided an example here. I'm including the name field. I've also included a name, and I've gone ahead and also provided a city. This can be as long or as short as you want it to be. The main syntax here is it does need to be encompassed inside of two curly brackets, one at the beginning and one at the end. Or you can use a square bracket instead if you are defining an array. An array is probably new to some of you in this class. That's just another form of just a list stored inside of a variable. I prefer just the curly bracket approach. It's a lot easier to see and understand, and why not go for easier. The other caveat here is you do need to surround the name and values around double quotes, and then you separate the two using a colon. So I provided values here, examples here. You do need to assign it to a variable, and then we can use that variable in different things within our JavaScript. So continuing on, just to talk a little bit more detail about the parse function. Like we said previously, a common use of JSON is to exchange data to and from a web server. When receiving data from a web server, the data is always a string. And so we need that ability to parse that string and put it into those containers that will be easy for us to use in our code. Continuing on here, here's kind of a quick example of using the JSON parse function. That top line here just is a quick example of what a response from a web server may look like. And just kind of back to our simple example from previous, I have a name, I have an age, and I have a city. So right now that's just one long string. We need to kind of break that up into pieces and just put those into those individual containers. So using that JSON parse function right here, I can just inside of my function parentheses, I embed that string. And then as you can see, it converts it, and then using the variable that I've defined, I can then call each one of these names. So just for example here, object.name, comma, space, object.age. Now that's what's going to be inserted into my HTML wherever I have the demo ID tag. So that is parsing the data from a web server. Now we need the ability to send data to a web server. So this is kind of the inverse. So we have another function for that called the stringify. And we need to be able to send that form data, for instance, as a string. So we need the ability to convert our JavaScript objects into a string, and we can do that using the JSON.stringify function. So here's an example. On the top line here, this is our JavaScript object. We can see the curly brackets. Here's our name pairs. Very similar to how JSON works. But then we can use the JSON.stringify function. We can then convert the object into a string. You notice I'm not embedding the entire string inside of my function, since I've gone ahead and assigned that to the variable obj, or object. All I need to do is call that variable and place it inside of my function. So it kind of decreases the coding required when doing this. So I'm going to go ahead and, so that's basically all I'm going to talk about on JSON. There's a wide variety of other topics, but to keep this simple and within the time frames, I've gone ahead and just centered on the parse and the stringify function examples. I'm going to go ahead and just look at a real-world example of that. I'm going to pull up my HTML code. On the top here, here's an example of converting my objects created by, here's an example of objects created by a JSON feed. I've gone ahead and within my code, I've just outlined my ID tags and just placed them on the page. And here's my JavaScript at the bottom. Similar to what we saw in the example, I've declared a variable and I've called my JSON.parse function. Here's the information that came from the web server, and I've gone ahead and parsed that and created my own individual JavaScript objects. And I'm just calling those objects and the name that goes with that, and that's going to display on my web page. And then vice versa, I'm going ahead and taken my JSON or my JavaScript objects and converted them into a string so that I can pass that to my web server. So again, I've declared my variable. Here's my JavaScript objects, and I've called my JSON.stringify my stringify function. I've passed in my variable of object, and then I've gone ahead and, just for our example sakes, I've pushed that into our web page. So if I just jump back here, here is how that looks, and I'll kind of just scroll this over to the side just so you can see both. As you can see, I can place that object, JavaScript object, anywhere in that page. So I've outlined here each of those, and I've passed in those ID values, and this is how it shows up on the page. and just I've gone ahead and just shown a string of how it will pass to the JSON. So that's it for this tutorial on JSON. I hope you found it entertaining and informational. JSON is widely used in the software industry. We actually use it. I work for a software company and we use it daily. It's widely used and understood. So having a basic understanding of what JSON is and how to use it will be very beneficial. So if you have any other questions, feel free to visit that link at the link at the beginning of the presentation, and thank you for watching.